27 years before Harry stepped back from the royal family, Diana wrote a letter predicting exactly what would happen. Her executors, her own mother and sister, buried it, changed her timeline, and tried to control her sons the way the palace had controlled her. But Diana had built an escape route into her will, and here's why she knew one son would need it more than the other. The controversial will the palace never expected. When Diana passed away in 1997, the world assumed her massive fortune would flow seamlessly to her sons, wrapped in royal discretion and handled behind palace walls. Behind the global mourning and those images of two young boys walking behind their mother's coffin, William just 15, Harry only 12. Diana left something else: a complicated estate, a controversial will, and a financial legacy her own family would go to court to change. Her will had been written back in 1993 during her separation from Charles. She had recently inherited 5 million British pounds from her father. That money formed the foundation. She never updated it after her 1996 divorce settlement, even though her financial advisors had urged her multiple times to revise it to reflect her new £17 million divorce settlement and changed circumstances. 1 year later, she was gone. For someone of Diana's stature, you would expect everything to be carefully structured, sealed behind palace walls. It wasn't. Royal historian Marlene Koenig later described the will as unimaginative, standard, even sloppy. And because Diana was no longer a working royal, her finances became public record. The woman who had spent years fighting for privacy in life had her financial affairs exposed to the world in her passing. Every asset itemized, every beneficiary named, every decision scrutinized in probate court where journalists and historians could access the documents. By August 1997, Diana's estate was worth more than £21 million. The world assumed it would flow seamlessly to William and Harry. Simple, fair, exactly what a loving mother would do. But then the executors opened the letter Diana had written the day after her will. And everything changed. Because Diana hadn't just divided money. She had written down 17 names, her godchildren, asking that 25% of her personal treasures be divided among them. Specific items, meaningful pieces, the kind of keepsakes that say, I loved you, I remembered you, I wanted you to have something of mine. Her own mother read that letter. Her own sister read that letter. And then they made a choice that would haunt Diana's legacy for decades. The night after Diana signed her will, she sat alone in Kensington Palace and wrote by hand on personal stationery. I would like you to allocate all my jewelry to the share to be held by my sons, so that their wives may, in due course, have it or use it. I would also like you to divide my personal chattels, not including my jewelry, between my 17 godchildren. She signed it, sealed it, and gave it to her executors with one instruction: make sure they get what I've chosen for them. According to sources close to Diana, she spent hours that evening making handwritten notes about which items should go to which godchild. A porcelain horse for one who loved riding, a silver frame containing a photo they'd taken together for another, personal mementos that held specific memories. They didn't. William and Harry were named as primary beneficiaries. But here's what matters. Charles could have saved his sons millions in taxes with one simple legal move. He chose not to. Whether it was bad advice, lack of attention, or something else entirely, we'll never know. But the result was that nearly half of what Diana left her boys disappeared before they ever saw it. Approximately 40% went to inheritance tax that could have been avoided if Charles had used his position to restructure the estate properly. Diana had fought her whole life to give them security, and in one administrative decision, half of it vanished. The jewelry distribution worked as Diana hoped. William proposed to Kate with Diana's sapphire engagement ring, the same one that had caused controversy back in 1981 when Diana first chose it from a catalog instead of accepting a custom royal commission. Kate has since worn Diana's Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, the pearl and diamond headpiece Diana wore frequently during the 80s, and Diana's sapphire earrings at royal events. Meghan later appeared wearing Diana's diamond Cartier bracelet during her interview with Oprah Winfrey, a piece Diana had purchased for herself after her divorce as a symbol of her newfound independence. She bought it in 1996 from Cartier on Bond Street, paying for it herself with money from her divorce settlement, telling friends it represented freedom. But the godchildren request? That never happened. Because the letter wasn't part of the formal will, it carried no legal weight. The executors, Diana's own mother, Frances Shan Kidd, and her eldest sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, chose to ignore that request entirely. These were the people Diana trusted most in the world. Yet they made a collective decision to override her clearly stated wishes. Instead of meaningful keepsakes, these 17 individuals were left with what some later described as hollow mementos. According to reports, they received items like hunting figurines, crockery, and coffee service pieces, decorative objects that held no personal significance, nothing that carried Diana's touch or reflected the relationships she'd built with each of them over years. One godchild reportedly received a single teacup from a set Diana had been given as a wedding gift, but never used. Another got a small wooden figurine Diana had never mentioned to them, something that had sat on a shelf at Kensington Palace gathering dust. These weren't the personal treasures Diana had intended. These were inventory items, distributed like auction lots. Years later, one godchild said in a private interview, "It wasn't about the money or the objects. It was knowing she'd thought of us, chosen something specific for each of us, wanted us to have a piece of her. And then being told that didn't matter enough to honor. That silence, that quiet pain, is Diana's legacy too." The executors weren't finished. They applied for a legal variation, delaying the boys' full access by 5 years. Diana had clearly stated William and Harry should inherit at 25. The executors changed it to 30. Their reasoning, presented to the court, suggested the princes needed more time to mature before handling such wealth. But no one asked why Diana herself, who knew her sons better than anyone, had chosen 25 as the right age. No one questioned whether the executors had ulterior motives for maintaining control. Here's what the executors didn't want anyone to know. If they had followed Diana's timeline, Harry would have received his full inheritance in 2009, 3 years before he met Meghan. He would have had complete financial independence before the palace knew he might need it. But they delayed it until 2014, when Harry was already deeply entrenched in royal duties, already dependent on palace funding for his security, his travel, his entire lifestyle. The longer they controlled the money, the longer they controlled Harry's options. Every decision he made between ages 25 and 30 had to be approved by the same institution that had failed to protect his mother. By the time the brothers finally gained control, each received approximately £10 million. The money that should have been theirs at 25 didn't arrive until their 30th birthdays, a full decade after their mother passed away. Even Diana's iconic wedding dress, the one with the dramatic 25-foot train that had captivated the world in 1981, didn't pass to her sons until Harry's 30th birthday in September 2014. 33 years after Diana wore it, 17 years after her passing. The ivory silk taffeta gown, designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel with 10,000 pearls hand-sewn into the fabric, had traveled the world on exhibition, raising money for charity while technically belonging to Diana's brother. It finally came home to her sons only when the executors decided the time was right. Diana had left behind detailed wishes, carefully documented. Her family decided which ones mattered. They honored the parts that aligned with royal tradition. They discarded the rest: the godchildren's inheritance, the timeline Diana specified, the immediate access she intended. The executors controlled not just the money, but the narrative of what Diana wanted. But why did Diana's executors fight so hard to control the timeline? What did Diana know in that 24-hour window between signing her will and writing that letter? To understand that, we need to go back to the relationship that destroyed Diana's trust in institutions and taught her that the only real protection was financial independence. The love triangle that taught Diana to protect herself. The love triangle didn't begin with Diana. It began at a polo match years earlier, and when Charles first met Camilla Shand. He was immediately drawn to how she smiled with her eyes, how she laughed at the same things he did, and how she spoke to him without fear or awe. She wasn't impressed by titles. She met him naturally, like a woman who saw the man before the crown. For a prince who'd spent his entire life being treated as a future king first and a person second, Camilla's ease was magnetic. Friends who witnessed their early relationship described Charles as transformed, lighter, more relaxed, genuinely happy in a way he'd never been before. But Camilla didn't meet essential royal requirements. She lacked the aristocratic pedigree the palace preferred. And critically, she wasn't a virgin, a requirement taken seriously for potential royal brides in the early 1970s. Those quiet judgments carried enormous weight. Charles joined the Royal Navy shortly after their relationship began. Distance crept in. Camilla drifted back toward Andrew Parker Bowles, a cavalry officer she'd dated on and off since the late 1960s. When Camilla accepted Andrew's proposal, Charles was devastated. In letters, he wrote that after what he believed had been a blissful relationship, fate had cruelly limited it to just 6 months. He reportedly pleaded with Camilla not to marry Andrew, even offering to leave the Navy to be with her, a suggestion that horrified palace advisors who believed his military service was essential to his development as future king. She married him on July 4th, 1973 anyway, at the Guards Chapel in London, with royal family members in attendance. The wedding didn't sever their bond. According to those close to the situation, the physical side of their relationship quietly resumed within a few years. Andrew Parker Bowles reportedly knew. Whether he chose not to interfere out of respect for Charles's position, or whether he found some benefit in his wife's relationship with the future king, remains speculation. But he didn't make a fuss. Some royal observers later suggested Andrew had his own extramarital relationships, and an unspoken arrangement existed within the marriage. A practical aristocratic understanding about discretion and separate lives. Charles first met Diana Spencer in 1977 when she was 16. There was no spark. He initially dated her older sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. Diana was simply part of the background, a shy teenager orbiting royal spaces without knowing she would soon be pulled straight into the center of the most watched relationship in the world. Imagine being 19 and realizing the man you're about to marry is still in love with someone else. Not suspecting it, knowing it with absolute certainty. That was Diana's reality 12 times, the 12 times she and Charles saw each other before he proposed. 12 dates to notice how his eyes drifted when Camilla's name came up. 12 conversations to hear the hesitation. 12 moments to understand she was being chosen not because she was loved, but because she fit the requirements. Years later, Diana would tell friends she knew even before the wedding that she was walking into an impossible situation. But she was 19, in love with the idea of being loved, and believed she could make it work. By 1980, Charles began viewing Diana differently. She was 19, beautiful, untouched by scandal. She fit the royal image perfectly, young enough to be molded, aristocratic enough to be acceptable, innocent enough to be presented as a fairy tale bride. The press noticed. Speculation exploded. Under mounting pressure from both the media and the palace, particularly from Prince Philip, who reportedly sent Charles a letter saying he must either propose to Diana or release her, as continuing the courtship without commitment would damage her reputation. Charles rushed toward a proposal. In February 1981, Charles and Diana announced their engagement. During their interview, a reporter asked if they were in love. Diana answered without hesitation, "Of course." Charles hesitated, then added with a slight laugh, "Whatever in love means." That 5-word qualification would haunt their marriage. Diana heard it. The world heard it. But everyone chose to focus on the fairy tale instead of the warning signs. Diana later told friends she felt her heart sink in that moment. Sitting beside Charles on the sofa at Buckingham Palace, realizing he couldn't even say he loved her on camera without qualifying it. They married July 29th, 1981. 750 million people watched Diana walk down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral. The ceremony was designed to be a spectacle. 3,500 guests, a glass coach pulled by 6 white horses, a dress that cost £9,000 and required 3 backups in case of emergency. The train alone weighed 25 pounds. It looked perfect on television. William arrived in 1982. Harry followed in 1984. Diana later said those early years were the closest she and Charles came to real happiness. There were moments of genuine connection, brief windows when they functioned as a family. But those moments were fragile. Barely 5 years in, Charles and Camilla found their way back to each other completely. Diana knew. She felt it in Charles's emotional distance, in phone calls that came at odd hours, on weekends when he'd disappear to the country without explanation. Charles and Camilla's affair wasn't just emotional, it was expensive. Royal finances later revealed that Charles maintained two separate households throughout the 1980s and 90s. One for Diana and the children at Kensington Palace and Highgrove. One for Camilla, first at her marital home, later at various estates where Charles would visit. He was literally paying for two families while claiming Diana was unstable. The palace staff knew. They facilitated the arrangements, coordinated the schedules, and kept the secret. Some staff members later reported feeling torn between loyalty to Diana and their duty to the future king. One former valet described the elaborate systems they developed: separate phone lines, coded messages, coordinated arrival and departure times to ensure Charles and Camilla were never caught together. Diana confronted Camilla directly at a party in 1989, at Camilla's sister's 40th birthday celebration. It was extraordinary courage. Walking up to the woman your husband loves, in a room full of people who all knew what was happening, and demanding the truth. Diana told friends later that her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. She'd rehearsed what she'd say in the car on the way there. Camilla reminded Diana that she had everything: public adoration, two beautiful children, every man in the world falling at her feet. Diana's reply cut straight through it. "I want my husband. Not the title, not the palaces. Just the man she married, the father of her children." She made one thing clear. She knew what was going on, and she refused to be treated like an idiot. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. Diana walked away. Camilla stayed at the party. Nothing changed except that now the truth was spoken out loud. After confronting Camilla, Diana didn't cry in private. She called her lawyer, Lord Mishcon. She called her financial advisor, Joseph Sanders. She began documenting everything: phone bills showing calls to Camilla's number, travel records placing Charles at locations near Camilla when he'd claimed to be elsewhere, witnesses who had seen them together. Not for revenge, for leverage. And when the divorce came, she made sure she got enough money that she would never have to beg the palace for anything again. By 1992, the affair exploded into public view. Intimate phone recordings between Charles and Camilla leaked, including the infamous Tampon Gate conversation, where Charles expressed a wish to be reincarnated as Camilla's tampon. The tapes were devastating. Around the same time, Andrew Morton published Diana, her true story, secretly shaped by Diana herself through recorded interviews with her friend Dr. James Colthurst. That December, Prime Minister John Major announced in Parliament that Charles and Diana were separating. In 1994, Charles admitted publicly what Diana had known privately. Yes, he'd been unfaithful. Yes, it was Camilla. The admission came during a documentary with Jonathan Dimbleby. But here's what that admission didn't include: that the affair had started before Diana knew she was pregnant with Harry. Camilla's number was programmed into Charles's private line under a fake name. That palace staff had been helping him maintain two separate lives for nearly a decade. Diana later admitted she'd also been unfaithful, with riding instructor James Hewitt, a relationship that began around 1986 and lasted 5 years. But there's a difference between an affair born from loneliness and one that predates marriage entirely. Diana was looking for the love she wasn't getting. Charles was maintaining the love he'd never lost. In a moment that became legendary, Charles gave a television interview defending himself. That same night, Diana stepped out in a daring black dress at London's Serpentine Gallery. A Christina Stambolian dress she'd owned for 3 years, but had never worn because Charles said it was too provocative. The world dubbed it the revenge dress. She didn't play the victim. She reclaimed the spotlight and reminded everyone that she could command attention without saying a single word. The dress, a short black silk cocktail dress with an asymmetrical neckline, became one of the most iconic fashion moments in history, photographed from every angle as Diana emerged from her car looking confident and defiant. In 1995, Diana sat down for her explosive BBC Panorama interview with Martin Bashir. She delivered the line that would define the entire relationship. "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. 23 million people watched in the UK alone. The Queen, watching at Sandringham, reportedly called a meeting immediately afterward to discuss accelerating the divorce." Charles and Diana finalized their divorce on August 28, 1996. Diana received a lump sum settlement of £17 million, kept her apartments at Kensington Palace, and retained the title Princess of Wales, though she lost the designation Her Royal Highness. In the year that followed, Diana dated heart surgeon Hasnat Khan, the relationship she later called the love of her life, and businessman Dodi Fayed. She was building a life outside palace walls. Then, in 1997, Diana lost her life in a car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris on August 31st. Charles flew to France with Diana's sisters to bring her body home. In London, thousands lined the streets in silence, flowers in hand, many openly weeping. Charles and Camilla appeared together publicly 2 years later. They married on April 9, 2005. The triangle closed when Diana passed away. But in those final 11 months between her divorce and her passing, Diana did something unexpected. She forgave them. Not publicly. But friends reported she'd stopped talking about Charles and Camilla with anger. She'd moved on. She'd found peace. And perhaps that's the cruelest irony. Diana finally found happiness, and 36 hours later, she was gone. Diana learned something in that moment with Camilla, standing face to face with the woman her husband loved. She learned that all the palaces, all the titles, all the public adoration couldn't protect you from one fundamental truth. If you don't control the money, you don't control your life. And Diana would spend the next 8 years, not 11, but 8 years between that confrontation and her passing, making sure her sons, especially Harry, would never be trapped the way she was. If you're seeing Princess Diana in a completely new light, subscribe now. We're uncovering the hidden strategies behind every icon who refused to be controlled. The pattern of rebellion that started long before the will. Diana knew that protocol wasn't just tradition, it was control. Every rule about how she should dress, where she should go, what she could say, who she could touch, each one was designed to remind her that she belonged to the institution now, not to herself. So she began testing the boundaries, quietly at first, then louder. She made history before the engagement was announced. She became the first royal bride to ever have a paying job. While living in London, Diana worked as a nanny and nursery school teacher, earning £100 per week at the Young England Kindergarten in Pimlico. Royal women weren't supposed to earn salaries. They were meant to arrive at the palace untouched by ordinary life, purely ornamental. Diana arrived with real-world experience, with the knowledge that she could support herself if needed. She balanced checkbooks, paid her own rent at Coleherne Court, bought her own groceries at the Tesco on Old Brompton Road. That seemingly simple fact would later prove crucial. Then came the engagement ring. When Charles proposed in February 1981, he presented Diana with a selection from royal jeweler Gerard. Instead of accepting a custom piece as tradition demanded, Diana chose a ring straight from the catalog, a 12-carat oval blue Ceylon sapphire surrounded by 14 solitaire diamonds set in white gold. It cost £28,000 and was available to anyone who could afford it. Royal purists were horrified. The ring wasn't unique. Any woman with sufficient money could buy the same ring. Diana picked what spoke to her, not what protocol prescribed. That same ring would pass to William, who gave it to Catherine Middleton in 2010 during a trip to Kenya. William proposed at a remote cabin on the slopes of Mount Kenya at an altitude of 12,500 feet, overlooking a lake where they'd spotted elephants earlier that day. Today, Kate wears it constantly, transforming what was once considered Diana's controversial choice into one of the most recognizable royal jewels in the world. At her wedding, Diana made another calculated choice. She removed the word obey from her vows. Instead of promising to love, honor, and obey Charles, Diana promised only to love, comfort, honor, and keep him. The change was deliberate, discussed with the Archbishop, and non-negotiable. When Diana was removed, Prince Philip reportedly asked the Archbishop of Canterbury to refuse to perform the ceremony unless she restored it. The Archbishop sided with Diana. Philip didn't attend the wedding rehearsal dinner in protest. It was one of the first times anyone had said no to Prince Philip and won. But Diana had drawn a line. Eventually, both Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle would follow her lead. What started as Diana's rebellion became the new standard. Diana redefined royal motherhood entirely. Until 1977, royal births happened at home. But Diana changed that. She gave birth to both William and Harry at St. Mary's Hospital in London in the private Lindo wing, then introduced them to the world on the hospital steps hours after delivery. Diana emerged in a polka-dot dress, holding newborn William just 22 hours after giving birth. 2 years later, she repeated the moment with Harry, wearing a red coat dress. That choice transformed royal birth from a private palace event into a public celebration, humanizing the monarchy in a way no formal portrait ever could. Inside the palace, raising royal children had traditionally been left to nannies, while parents carried out official duties. Diana refused that distance. She insisted on being actively involved. She put them to bed, reading bedtime stories in different voices to make the boys laugh, creating elaborate characters and sound effects. She took them to school in her own car, a green Jaguar, becoming the first senior royal to personally do the school run. She rearranged her schedule around their needs, sometimes canceling official engagements if the boys were sick or needed her. In March 1983, Diana shocked the palace. She took 9-month-old William on an official tour of Australia and New Zealand. Royal children didn't travel on official tours, but Diana refused to be separated from her baby for 6 weeks. The proposed schedule would have kept her away from William for 42 days straight, a trip covering 27 cities across 2 countries. She insisted William come along, saying she'd rather cancel the tour than leave him behind. Charles initially resisted, but Diana held firm. That tour changed everything. The world watched Diana juggling official duties with motherhood. People responded to the young mother who adored her child. Photos of Diana on the beach with William, of her holding him during breaks between engagements, of Charles and Diana playing with him on a blanket. These images humanized the monarchy in ways centuries of formal portraits never had. When Diana announced she wanted William to attend public school, the Queen called an emergency family meeting at Windsor Castle. Prince Philip argued it was a security nightmare. Charles initially agreed, saying it would make William a target for kidnapping or attacks. The palace security team prepared a 40-page report detailing every risk, from IRA threats to simple playground accidents that could become international incidents. Diana read the entire report, then pushed back on every point. She said, "I'm his mother. I decide." The palace tried one final tactic. They leaked to the press that Diana was being reckless with her son's safety, hoping public backlash would force her to back down. It backfired spectacularly. Parents across Britain rallied behind Diana, saying if the future king could attend public school, it proved the schools were safe enough for their children. The Daily Mail ran a poll showing 78% public support for Diana's decision. William started at Wetherby School in January 1987, arriving in Diana's car wearing the same uniform as every other student. The heir to the throne finger-painting with ordinary children. It was revolutionary. She took her boys to homeless shelters run by the Passage in Westminster and Centrepoint in Soho. She brought them to theme parks like Alton Towers and Thorpe Park, where they'd queue for rides with everyone else. She took them to McDonald's in Kensington High Street, where they'd order Happy Meals and sit in the window like any other family. She let them ride public transportation, the London Underground, where commuters would do double takes seeing princes holding onto the rail. She exposed them deliberately to experiences most royals never had, teaching them that their position came with responsibilities. While other royals maintained stiff upper lips, Diana spoke openly about pain. She participated secretly in Andrew Morton's 1992 book, Diana, Her True Story, recording 6 hours of confessional interviews that Dr. Coldhurst delivered to Morton on cassette tapes. Then, in 1995, she gave that explosive BBC Panorama interview, speaking directly to the camera about bulimia, self-harm, and her failing marriage. She owned her story. Diana abandoned the Queen's signature gloves and hats during public engagements. The Queen never appeared without gloves, white or beige, always matching her outfit, always creating a barrier. Diana wanted direct contact. She wanted skin-to-skin connection when she held someone's hand. She explained simply, "You can't cuddle a child in a hat." That sentence captured Diana's entire philosophy. That instinct led to one of the most powerful moments of Diana's life. On April 19, 1987, Princess Diana was scheduled to open the first purpose-built AIDS ward at Middlesex Hospital. The palace briefed her carefully. Smile, wave, give the speech, Cut the ribbon. Do not, under any circumstances, touch the patients. In 1987, the terror was absolute. People believed you could catch AIDS from toilet seats, from shared silverware, from breathing the same air. Schools were banning children whose parents had AIDS. Funeral directors were refusing to handle the bodies. Hospice workers were wearing full hazmat suits. The fear was harming people almost as fast as the disease. Diana arrived in a tailored red suit. She gave the speech they'd written for her. She cut the ribbon, and then she walked into the ward, sat on a patient's bed, took off her gloves in full view of the cameras, and extended her bare hand to shake him. The patient's name was Ivan Cohen. He later said that this simple gesture changed his life, that for the first time since his diagnosis, someone had treated him like a human being instead of a biohazard. The photographers captured it. The palace panicked. The Queen's private secretary called within the hour. What was she thinking? This would cause a scandal. People would think she was being reckless with her own health. Diana's response was simple. Good. Maybe now everyone else will stop being so frightened. That photograph appeared on every front page the next morning. Applications to volunteer at AIDS hospices increased 400% within a week. Donations to the Terrence Higgins Trust tripled. Diana hadn't just broken protocol. She'd changed the entire conversation. Her brother, Earl Spencer, later explained that what mattered was making it clear that people could live in community with those suffering from AIDS. Years later, Prince Harry took an HIV test publicly alongside Rihanna in 2017, streaming it live on Facebook, continuing the work their mother started. Harry said he did it because his mother would have wanted him to use his platform to fight stigma. Diana also refused to hide her own struggles. In the Morton book and later interviews, she revealed she'd been living with bulimia nervosa throughout much of her marriage, sometimes making herself sick 4 or 5 times per day. She described hiding the disorder during official functions, excusing herself from state dinners to purge in palace bathrooms. She described the reality of living with an eating disorder while trying to fulfill royal duties. Her candor shocked the palace, but resonated with millions. Eating disorder helplines reported call volumes increasing 500% the week after her Panorama interview. By 1995, Diana had broken so many rules that the palace stopped trying to control her. They realized she'd built something they couldn't touch, her own relationship with the public earned through authenticity. Every rule Diana broke was practice for the biggest rebellion, the one she would execute from beyond the grave, using the one weapon the palace couldn't strip away: money. The inheritance that bought one son his freedom. In 2021, Prince Harry sat across from Oprah Winfrey in a garden in Montecito, California, and said 8 words that explained everything. "I've got what my mom left me, and without that, we would not have been able to do this." Without Diana's money, Harry and Meghan would have been trapped. The palace had cut them off financially in the first quarter of 2020, the moment they announced their intention to step back. No income, no security funding, and security alone costs millions per year. No support, just silence and a clear message: come back or suffer the consequences. But Diana had seen this coming. She couldn't have known the specific details, couldn't have known Harry would fall in love with an American actress, couldn't have predicted he would choose love over duty. But she knew something crucial. William would always be taken care of by the institution. Harry would need an escape route. After Diana passed away, each brother was allowed to choose one personal item from her belongings at Kensington Palace. The rest would be distributed according to the will. But this was personal. One item to keep close, to remember her by, to carry forward. William chose Diana's Cartier Tank Française watch, an elegant gold timepiece that Diana's grandfather had given her. The watch had a particular significance. It was one of the few pieces Diana wore during her final summer, that last season of freedom in 1997, when she was photographed on yachts in the Mediterranean, dining in Paris, living the independent life she'd fought so hard to build. After her divorce, Diana wore that watch constantly. It appeared in nearly every photograph from 1996 and 97, glinting on her wrist as she waved to crowds, checked the time between appointments, and reached out to touch someone's hand. William believed his mother would want him to have it. He wears it still, a quiet reminder of the woman who changed the monarchy forever. Harry chose the sapphire engagement ring, but the brothers made a pact immediately. Whoever married first would use the ring to propose. They agreed their mother's ring should mark new beginnings. It was a remarkably selfless decision on Harry's part. He was only 12 when Diana passed away, young enough that the ring represented one of his most tangible connections to his mother. Yet he was willing to let it go if William found love first. When William prepared to propose to Catherine Middleton in 2010 during a trip to Kenya, Harry handed over their mother's most iconic piece without hesitation, without resentment. The exchange happened privately, just the two brothers, with Harry telling William that their mother would have wanted Kate to have it. William later told reporters that proposing with his mother's ring was his way of ensuring Diana didn't miss out on the excitement. The ring that had represented Diana's complicated relationship with the monarchy now represented hope for something healthier. Harry honored his mother another way. When he designed Meghan's engagement ring in 2017, he placed 2 diamonds from Diana's personal collection on either side of the center stone. A diamond he'd selected from Botswana, where he and Meghan had fallen in love during a camping trip under the stars. The Botswana diamond represented their future together, while Diana's diamonds represented the past Harry carried with him. Diana's presence woven quietly into both their futures. When Meghan first saw the ring, Harry told her the diamonds were his mother's way of being part of their journey, of giving her blessing to the choice he was making. But these symbolic gestures masked a deeper financial reality. Many people assume William and Harry inherited Althorpe, Diana's childhood home in Northamptonshire and her final resting place. She's buried on an island in the middle of an ornamental lake called the Round Oval, accessible only by boat, surrounded by 36 oak trees planted by Diana's father, one for each year of her life. Visitors often assume this means Althorpe belonged to Diana. The estate draws thousands of visitors each year, many coming specifically to pay respects to Diana, leaving flowers at the gates even though they cannot reach the island itself. It didn't. Althorpe is the ancestral seat of the Spencer family, not royal property. Under British inheritance law and aristocratic tradition, it will pass to Diana's nephew, Louis Spencer, currently Viscount Althorpe, son of Diana's brother Charles. Louis will one day inherit the 14,000-acre estate, the stately home with its priceless art collection, and the responsibility of maintaining Diana's memory on the grounds where she played as a child. Diana's money went to William and Harry. Her family home did not. This meant that unlike typical aristocratic inheritances where land and titles provide ongoing income, Diana's sons received a finite sum with no estate-generating revenue to sustain them long-term. Today, their financial paths look vastly different. Although both brothers received equal inheritances, approximately £10 million each after taxes and executor delays, William's overall net worth now far exceeds Harry's. William's wealth is estimated at well over $100 million. Some estimates, when including his ownership of the Duchy of Cornwall, which generates approximately £24 million per year in income from commercial properties, residential rentals, and agricultural land, place his eventual net worth approaching $1 billion. Harry's net worth sits closer to $60 million. The disparity isn't because William managed money better or because Harry spent recklessly. It's structural. William's position as heir comes with automatic institutional support. As Prince of Wales, William now controls the Duchy of Cornwall, a vast portfolio of land, property, and investments spanning 130,000 acres across 23 counties in England and Wales. The duchy includes everything from London residential properties to Cornish beaches, from organic farms to commercial real estate in major cities. That income is his by birthright, guaranteed for life, and will pass to his son George when the time comes. Harry has no equivalent. The second son gets a lump sum and is expected to make it last. Diana never explicitly accounted for that imbalance in her 1993 will. How could she? Both boys were children, William 11, Harry 9. Their futures seemed similarly royal, similarly secure. She couldn't have imagined a scenario where one son would remain firmly within the institution, while the other would need to build an entirely independent life outside it. But perhaps she sensed something. Perhaps that's why she structured her estate the way she did. Equal shares, but with the flexibility for her sons to use the money however their lives demanded. But others recognized the disparity. To help bridge the gap, Charles quietly set up a separate trust fund for Harry, though the details remain private and protected by the same confidentiality that shields most royal financial arrangements. Diana's great-grandmother, the Queen Mother, did the same. Her will specified Harry would receive substantial payments at 21 and again at 40, recognizing that the younger son would need support and the institution wouldn't automatically provide. The Queen Mother had lived through enough royal history to understand the precarious position of spare heirs. She'd seen how Princess Margaret struggled financially compared to her sister the Queen, how younger royals were expected to maintain royal standards without royal resources. Remember those executors who delayed the inheritance 5 years? They kept Harry dependent on the palace for 5 more years than Diana intended. 5 more years of needing royal approval for every expense. 5 more years of being controlled. If Harry had received his inheritance in 2009, as Diana specified, he would have had complete financial freedom at age 25. 7 years before he met Meghan. 5 years before he understood he might need an exit strategy. Those 5 years mattered more than anyone realized at the time. Between ages 25 and 30, Harry became deeply embedded in royal life, taking on more patronages, representing the Queen at official functions, building relationships with military organizations, establishing himself as a working royal. Every commitment he made, every organization that depended on him, every role he accepted, made walking away more complicated. The palace cut them off almost immediately after they stepped back. Without family support, without institutional backing, they needed resources to survive. And not just to survive, but to maintain the security necessary to keep their family safe. Former royal protection officers estimated Harry and Meghan's security costs at over £2 million annually. Private security teams operating around the clock, armored vehicles for transportation, advanced threat assessment from former military intelligence specialists, secure communication systems, residential security infrastructure, and round-the-clock protection for a family that faced documented threats from extremist groups. The costs were staggering. And unlike William, whose security is funded by the British government as part of his role as future king, Harry would have to pay for every element of protection himself. Diana's inheritance became Harry's lifeline. It gave him the ability to say no to an institution that had consumed his mother, to choose his own happiness, to build a life on his own terms. Diana's money paid for their security during that first vulnerable year when they were most exposed, when threats were highest, when they were navigating the transition from protected royals to private citizens. It paid for their $11 million home in Montecito, a 7-acre estate with 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, a pool, tennis court, tea house, and guest house, purchased in June for 2020. The property sits behind gates in one of California's most secure communities, surrounded by other high-profile residents who value privacy. It gave them breathing room to build their new foundation, Archewell, to secure production deals with Netflix and Spotify worth over $100 million combined, to create sustainable income independent of the palace. Without Diana's money as a bridge, those deals might never have happened. They needed time to establish themselves, to prove their worth in the entertainment industry, to build credibility outside the royal framework. Today, Harry lives in California with Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet, building a life Diana never got to finish. Every choice he makes, speaking openly about mental health in his Apple TV series, The Me You Can't See, publishing his memoir, Spare, which became one of the fastest-selling nonfiction books in history, stepping back from royal duties, choosing peace over protocol, traces back to the financial freedom Diana left him. She didn't just give him money. She gave him permission to be himself. She gave him proof that leaving was possible, that survival outside the institution was achievable, that choosing happiness over duty wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Which part of Diana's strategy surprised you most? And what other royal figures should we investigate next? Let us know in the comments. The childhood that built a woman who needed an escape plan. Diana understood something about freedom because she'd spent a lifetime learning what it cost to be trapped. To answer where that understanding came from, we need to go back to the childhood that taught Diana Spencer how to survive. Princess Diana entered the world on July 1st, 1961, at Park House in Sandringham, Norfolk, the fourth of 5 children born to Viscount and Viscountess Althorpe. She arrived into a family woven tightly into royal history. For generations, the Spencers had moved in the same circles as the crown. Both grandmothers had served as ladies-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Royal connections weren't something Diana would grow into. They were there from the start, part of her birthright. But beneath the titles, disappointment was waiting when Diana was born. Her parents had desperately hoped for a boy to carry on the Spencer line. When Diana arrived, another girl after two older sisters, Sarah and Jane, no name was chosen for an entire week. The baby existed in limbo while her parents processed their disappointment and consulted family members about what to call this unexpected third daughter. When they finally settled on Diana Frances, the name honored her mother and a distant Spencer aunt who'd once been considered a potential Princess of Wales herself. History was circling Diana's life before she was old enough to understand it. But before Diana ever took her first breath, loss had touched the household. An infant brother, John, had been born in January 1960. He lived only 10 hours before passing away from complications. The grief was immense, compounded by the pressure to produce a male heir. In aristocratic families, titles and estates passed through the male line. Without a son, the Spencer legacy faced uncertainty. The pressure only deepened after John's passing. Diana's mother, Frances, was pushed into humiliating medical examinations at clinics on Harley Street in London, where doctors tried to determine why she kept producing girls instead of boys, as if gender was something Frances could control through diet or medical intervention. Years later, Diana's brother Charles would describe that period as devastating for their parents, the emotional fracture that likely doomed their marriage from the start. When Diana was 7, her parents' marriage disintegrated. The separation was bitter and public, playing out in newspapers and society gossip columns. Frances began a relationship with Peter Shand Kidd, a wallpaper heir she'd met through mutual friends. During the initial separation in late 1967, Diana lived briefly with her mother in London, in a flat Frances had rented in Cadogan Place. Those months felt unstable, shuttling between parents, caught in the middle of adult conflicts she couldn't understand. But that Christmas, Diana's father, John Spencer, refused to let Diana and her younger brother Charles return to their mother. With support from his former mother-in-law, Lady Fairmoy, Diana's maternal grandmother, who sided with her son-in-law over her own daughter in the custody dispute, John Spencer fought for and won custody of all 4 children. The custody battle made headlines. Diana stayed with her father. She would later describe feeling abandoned, watching her mother's car drive away after visits, wondering why she couldn't go home with her. The wounds from that Christmas never fully healed. Another significant change followed in 1976, when Diana was 15. Her father remarried Rain, Countess of Dartmouth, daughter of romantic novelist Barbara Cartland. The relationship between Diana and her stepmother turned bitter almost immediately. Diana saw Rain as an intruder. Rain, in turn, seemed to view the Spencer children as obstacles to her new marriage. The incident that defined their relationship happened when Diana was 17. She came home from Westheath School for holidays to find Rain had redecorated Diana's bedroom without permission. Every photo Diana had carefully displayed of her mother, her siblings, her friends from school had been removed and replaced with formal Spencer family portraits. Diana's personal items, the things that made the room hers, had been boxed up and stored in the attic. When Diana protested, Rain told her coldly that as long as she lived under that roof, the house would reflect the Spencer legacy, not Diana's childish sentimentality. Diana's response was to push Rain down the main staircase at Althorpe, 14 stone steps. Rain tumbled but miraculously wasn't seriously injured. Her father sided with Rain. Diana was sent to live with friends for 3 weeks. In that moment, Diana learned the lesson that would shape everything. Family doesn't always protect you. Home isn't always safe. The only person you can rely on is yourself. Years later, Diana would describe her childhood as very unhappy and very unstable. Those weren't exaggerations. In 1975, Diana's father inherited the title of Earl Spencer, following the passing of Diana's grandfather, Albert Spencer, 7th Earl Spencer. Overnight, Diana's father became the 8th Earl Spencer, and Diana became Lady Diana Spencer. The family moved from Park House, which they'd been leasing from Queen Elizabeth, to Althorpe, the grand Spencer estate spanning 13,000 acres in Northamptonshire. They had a new title, a new home filled with priceless art, including works by Rubens and Van Dyck, furniture that had belonged to Georgian royalty. But the emotional turbulence followed Diana inside those grand walls. At West Heath Girls' School, Diana's teachers noticed she was struggling with severe dyslexia. She'd failed her O-level examinations twice despite clearly being intelligent in other ways. But instead of getting her properly tested and supported, the school simply noted in her file that she tried her best and showed excellent improvement in her needlework and deportment. Years later, Diana would describe the shame of feeling stupid, of watching her older sisters excel academically while she struggled with basic exams. When William struggled with reading in primary school, Diana fought to get him the dyslexia support she'd never had, turning her own pain into protection for her son. But teachers noticed something else about Diana. She had extraordinary kindness, natural empathy, an instinct to show up for others who were struggling. She volunteered at a nearby facility for mentally handicapped children, spending hours playing with kids others avoided. She received the school's special award for community spirit, recognizing her volunteer work and her ability to connect with people. It was an early sign of the compassion that would later define her public life. Diana left school at 16 without qualifications for university. By the mid-1970s, she began volunteering at a psychiatric hospital in Kent, spending time with patients who had few visitors. In 1978, she worked as a nanny in Hampshire. She took advanced cooking courses at the Cordon Bleu School in London. She worked low-paying jobs, teaching dance to young children at a studio in Pimlico until a skiing accident in the Swiss Alps forced her off her feet for 3 months, then taking cleaning jobs for family friends in South Kensington, hosting at parties for £50 per event, working as a nanny for an American family, eventually assisting as a nursery teacher at the Young England Kindergarten. In July 1979, her mother bought her a small flat at Coleherne Court in Earl's Court as an 18th birthday gift. Diana moved in with 3 flatmates, Virginia Pittman, Carolyn Pride, and Ann Bolton, and they split the £60 weekly rent 4 ways. Diana decorated her room with posters of ballet dancers and photographs of her family. For the first time, she had a space that was truly hers, where no one could tell her what to display on the walls. She was learning what independence meant, paying bills on time, maintaining a home, getting herself to work on the underground, managing relationships with flatmates who became her closest friends. These were skills most aristocratic women of her generation never learned. Diana learned to manage every detail herself. When Diana sat down to write her will in 1993, she wasn't thinking about the palace or royal protocol. She was thinking about the 7-year-old girl whose father refused to let her go home to her mother that Christmas. She was thinking about the 15-year-old pushed down the stairs by a stepmother who wanted her gone. She was thinking about every moment she'd been powerless, every time an institution or family member made decisions about her life without asking what she wanted. And she made absolutely certain that when it came to her son's futures, she would have the final word. Diana Spencer entered royal life in 1981, knowing one crucial truth: no institution, no matter how powerful, could be trusted to protect you. If this revealed a Princess Diana you never knew existed, a strategist, a protector, a woman who understood power in ways the palace never anticipated, please like this video and share it with someone who remembers her legacy. Princess Diana's story wasn't just about royal protocol or tragic romance. It was about a woman who learned early that survival means protecting yourself. Diana spent her childhood watching institutions fail to protect her. Then she entered a palace that promised fairy tales but delivered betrayal. So Diana adapted. She learned the system's weaknesses and exploited them. She rewrote protocol one choice at a time, working before marriage, choosing her own ring, removing obedience from her vows, redefining motherhood, touching AIDS patients, speaking about bulimia, giving that panorama interview. And when the time came to structure her estate, she didn't just divide assets. She created leverage. She made sure her sons, especially Harry, would have what she never did: the financial freedom to walk away. The executors delayed her plan by 5 years. They ignored her wishes about the godchildren, but they couldn't erase Diana's core strategy. They couldn't prevent her money from eventually reaching her sons. And they couldn't stop Harry from using that inheritance exactly as Diana likely hoped, to escape when staying became impossible. Even years after her passing, Diana was still teaching her sons the lesson her childhood taught her. Real power isn't a title or a crown. Real power is the ability to choose your own life, to walk away from situations that diminish you, to say no to institutions that demand your silence. And sometimes, the most powerful inheritance isn't measured in pounds or dollars. It's an escape route. It's freedom. Princess Diana understood that lesson better than perhaps anyone else in the royal family's modern history. She lived it. She embodied it. And through her will, through her careful financial planning, she passed that lesson on to her sons. William may never need that lesson. His path is set. But Harry needed it desperately. And when he needed it most, Diana's final gift was waiting for him. Not just money, but freedom, choices, and the possibility of building a life on his own terms. That may be Princess Diana's greatest legacy. Not the charity work, though that mattered enormously. Not the fashion, though she was undeniably iconic. Not even the modernization of the monarchy. Diana's greatest legacy might be teaching her sons and teaching all of us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is protect your own peace, even when institutions pressure you to sacrifice it. Sometimes survival means having the resources to leave, and sometimes love means giving someone the financial freedom to choose their own path. Princess Diana spent her life learning how to be free. In her passing, she made sure her sons would have that same possibility. The palace tried to control her in life. Her family tried to control her legacy after her passing. But Diana had the last word, and that word was freedom. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration of Princess Diana's hidden strategy compelling, please subscribe to our channel. We uncover the untold stories behind history's most fascinating figures, the decisions that shaped their lives, the secrets they kept, and the legacies they left behind. What topics should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below. This is the Golden Age Files,